All right, ladies and gentlemen, and with that, I will begin our report here. This is going to be kind of a combination report for um, the morning of the 18th here in Ukraine, and also the night of the 17th. It's going to be kind of a combination report between the two. So, I'm going to start off with kind of going over some of the main headlines from over the past about 24 hours or so. There's been quite a few developments. I'm going to turn down that. Yeah. So that's why we don't have this. Some people were asking, why don't you have the that Lviv cam audio up? That is exactly why, right there, because you're more likely to hear some screechy cars from the local civilians there in Lviv than any signs of conflict. The audio we really want to be listening to is what's going on in and around Kiev. The other day we were listening in and we were hearing a lot of gunfire that was being exchanged in the early morning hours. However, while I'm giving you the reports and stuff, we kind of don't want those loud screeching cars interrupting things. So I'm going to turn that audio down there just for a little while. Okay, so starting off with some of the main headlines going back to yesterday, the 17th. There's been quite a few things that have occurred. Of course, Biden called Putin a war criminal. The Kremlin came out and they made a response to that, saying it was an unreasonable, I believe was their words, unreasonable and a dangerous accusation to call Putin a war criminal. The geopolitical terms that the U.S. and that Russia are on have really deteriorated over the past few days here, and there's been a lot of news from that. One second, I still have that audio coming from that camera on my end. Let me get that turned down. Okay, we don't need that going for now. Okay, so Putin also in a kind of a very chilling turn of events kind of has called for a so-called cleansing of Russian society. Um, uh, so what that exactly means is kind of unclear. He's also issued over the past day a few chilling warnings to Russian air quotes traitors and air quotes scum. That's how he referred to them in these statements. I believe kind of this is a sign that he's starting to kind of tighten the grip around his hierarchy and trying to block out dissenting voices in not only the Russian political scene but nationwide across Russia. So just going through some of the key points here tonight. This is going in from last night, from the 17th until now. New satellite images show devastation to residential and civilian infrastructure in Ukrainian cities such as Cherniv, Kharkiv, and Sumy. Again, I've been talking about this for a while now. That Kharkiv has been probably one of the most heavily hit places in Ukraine. Um, uh, just the sheer amount of destruction to residential buildings, to civilian targets, has been overwhelming in not only the city of Kharkiv but the region in and around that area. Sumy has also been hit pretty hard. Cherniv has also been hit pretty hard. Mariupol has been decimated as well. Again, that comes according to those Maxar satellite images, which we have been uh, taking a look at. We get those in about 12 hours after an event occurs. We get those satellite images in, and we're able to take a look and kind of get an eye on what's going on the ground there and what those Russian movements are looking like. Koch Industries, an American manufacturing giant that employs 1,222 people. Uh, 122,000 people, sorry, around the world said that it would not exit its operations in Russia. There's been quite a few companies that have, kind of been a little hesitant to pull the plug on operations inside Russia, as a lot of these companies depend on those incomes from Russia. That it would be financial suicide for them to pull out of the country at this time. Of course, that will probably change as this situation worsens. God forbid. If it does worsen, you will see a lot more of these companies that have been hesitant. They'll be forced to pull out of, out of operating within Russia. Uh, Tokyo, Japan spots 4 Russian military ships passing through the uh, Tsugaru Strait between the Japanese islands off Honshu and Hokkaido. Military vehicles were observed on board, so there's been spottings of Russian military presence in a few different places over this past week that have been a little bit concerning given the ongoing situation and circumstances. Multiple Russian Federation planes have been spotted via flight radar departing from Moscow, going to Siberia, and then returning. Again, we have been following a lot of Russian aircraft activity over the past about 12 to 24 hours. It's been a little bit concerning in some areas. Again, we don't have too much in the way of concrete information on what exactly a lot of this activity is, but it is concerning when you do see heightened activity at any time, especially given the fact that it is wartime. So when you see them doing certain things, you have to be kind of inquisitive, and you have to be asking the questions. Again, are they moving supplies around? Are they moving troops around? Are they relocating people? What exactly are they doing? Um, Again, so just to reiterate, there was multiple Russian Federation planes. I believe those were IL-76s, if I'm not mistaken. Those all departed from Moscow and were heading to Siberia and then returned. There was some other activity as well that was tracked over the past 24 hours. Later in the evening, we might kind of go over some of that flight radar activity. Russian President Putin has called for, again, a self-purification to rid the country of anyone who questions his invasion of Ukraine. Again, he wants to tighten the grip on not only his hierarchy, not only the political actors in his country, but everybody in general. We've seen thousands of people arrested for speaking out against his actions in the country. It's very unfortunate turn of events there. Again, he's called for this quote unquote self purification. We don't know exactly what that entails, what that will mean. Again, we have seen signs that they, have started to kind of lock down, so to speak, the FSB. And I mean, there's been arrests made where, they're trying to tie up leaks and loose ends and trying to make sure increase overall operational security, because it looks like they have had some intel leakage, so to speak, in the past month or so here, that has hindered some of their operations in Ukraine. Okay, the Ukrainians have obviously got so to speak, have an inside man somewhere in the Kremlin, and they've been able to kind of get a heads up. Till this point, and so I think that's what we're seeing here is kind of, Putin getting a grip on his intel and getting a grip on the hierarchy there, and the leadership structure in the Kremlin. Okay, so. From Russia, the Deputy Secretary of Russia's Security Council warned the U.S. on Thursday, that was the 17th, that Moscow had the might to put the world's preeminent superpower in its place, and accused the West of, and I quote, stoking a wild Russophobia plot to tear Russia apart. Again, some very concerning words there coming from the Kremlin. Almost immediately following that last statement, both Russia and the U.S.'s mobile nuclear control center doomsday planes went up via flight radar. Those are those E-4Bs. We've been tracking those now almost all day. There was a slurry of other aircraft activity that was pretty concerning along with that we don't usually see when they throw the E-4Bs in the air. When they get up these Sentry planes in the air, there was a lot of other activity that we saw simultaneously that was a little bit interesting, and quite concerning. So we've been keeping a close eye on those developments today. That's really been the majority of the work today has been kind of getting kind of a fix on what is going on here behind the scenes and what situation here is really unfolding. Of course, Putin is being put between a rock and a hard place now, and that's a very dangerous situation. To have him backed into this corner like this, it's not good. And I mean, we're seeing kind of reactions from the situation here, reactions from the evolving environmental circumstances here in real time. With some of these aircraft movements, with some of these words that are being shared, some of this rhetoric that is being shared here now. So he says, can you go into more detail on the E-4Bs? Yeah, again, those are the nuclear doomsday planes. We call them a doomsday plane. It's sounds like a buzzword there, but really what it is, it's just it's a command and control center, an airborne command and control center. That's where the president would be. That's where the Joint Chiefs of Staff would be in the event of a nuclear confrontation, and it's a plane. It's just a large, like a passenger plane, that's outfitted with a lot of communications equipment, and is meant to be in the air in the time of a nuclear war. That's basically the gist of it. So it says an E6B. I believe the ones that were up earlier were the E4s, but there is also an E6. Again, I'm not an expert on military hardware or aircraft, but I'll do a quick search here. Yes, I believe the E6 Mercury is another one that we look at from time to time, and then the one that was up in the air today was I believe an Boeing E4B, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it was an E4B that was up in the skies earlier today on the 17th. Sorry. Okay, so. So yeah, that's definitely a pretty interesting development. You see those statements made, and then immediately afterwards, you see these planes scrambled and are in the air. And it's even more concerning when you see the Russian equivalents of them in the air right after the remarks are made as well. So definitely very concerning. Some Russian creditors have received payment in dollars of Russian bond coupons, which fell due this week. The Russian Finance Ministry said earlier that it has sent fines to cover the 117 million in coupon payments. The U.S. State Department has confirmed deaths of a U.S. citizen in the besieged city of Cherniv. Again, I believe we heard about his death earlier. Actually, they were covering that on CNN as well. That made headlines tonight. There's been quite a few U.S. casualties in this war so far, including a few journalists, if I'm not mistaken. Officials say the Ukrainian military begins preparations to defend Odessa, a city strategically located at the port of the Black Sea. Again, I mean, we know that they've been preparing for this assault on Odessa for weeks now. This is something they've been doing for a very long time. Since before the invasion started, they've been preparing in Odessa for this invasion and for this possible amphibious assault that may take place. Again, earlier today, another fact here: a funeral service was done in Kiev today for fallen soldiers that again took place, I believe, in the city center in Kiev there. I was hoping to have a camera on that service, but we weren't able to get a feed on that. It was kind of like a big gathering there I'm pretty sure that was in the city center, in the square, in the Maidan there, if I'm not mistaken. Again, we've seen similar services taking place across Ukraine over the past week or so, as the Ukrainians, begin to mourn their losses. So those are most of our headlines from last night into tonight. We've had also some developments with China over the past 12 to 24 hours here. We might speak a little bit to that later. Again, U.S. now stating that they might punish China if it gives military aid to Russia. There's also been some movement by some Russian, sorry, not Russian, but by some Chinese military assets as well that we've been keeping an eye on closely. Again, I'll speak to more to that later, and we might talk about some of that later in this evening's open panel discussion. Some people saying Lviv airport just got hit. Yep, we spoke about that a few moments ago. We're still waiting to get more information on that situation. I'm going to now go ahead and go through all of the updates here on live UA map. And get everybody kind of updated as to everything that's been going on over the past about 12 hours or so. I know we are kind of lagging behind in some updates here because during the early morning hours, sometimes live UA map kind of stops feeding updates, and then all of a sudden later they'll all pile up, and the ones that we're missing now from 5 hours till now will be there. But starting at 5 hours ago and going back till about the 12-hour mark. I'm going to give you guys updates on everything that is occurring there. So I'll scroll back here to about 12 hours. Yeah, right back to here, I think, is actually right here. So Kydrov of Chechnya announced an additional 1,000 fighters to go to Ukraine. I'm not sure if these are pro-Ukrainian fighters or if these are pro-Russian Chechen fighters, but I'm going to try to get information on that really quick for you guys. Yeah, so that is, yeah, those are pro. Yeah, so those are pro-Russian. See, so there's been some confusion because there are some pro-Chechen groups that are looking to go fight against Russians in Ukraine. So yeah, again, that is those Chechen forces there, which are heading in to Ukraine. About another 1,000 of them. 12 hours ago, Putin, in a phone call with Erdogan. Again, I'm not the best at that pronunciation there. Again, I believe Putin, I think, is trying to reach out and, kind of re-solidify as many of his political ties, as many of his geopolitical ties as he possibly can. And, trying to boost confidence in some of these other countries, of his plan and what his plans are moving forward for the region. Now, given that Turkey is literally right smack dab in the middle of this entire situation, being right there on the Black Sea, right next to Ukraine. It's definitely kind of a dicey situation for them geopolitically, and so it's going to be interesting to see what direction they kind of go. I know early on in the conflict there was I believe a Turkish tanker that was struck, and you also have Turkish supplied Bayraktar drones, Turkish-made Bayraktar drones that are killing Russian soldiers in Ukraine. So it's a very interesting dynamic. Again, so in that call with Putin, he also offered to host Putin and Zelensky for peace talks. We're not exactly sure if what's going to come of that, and if that request will be accepted or not. I believe at this time it has not been. But hopefully some information on that could be coming soon. 12 hours ago, from Zelensky's office, immediate ceasefire and withdrawal of Russian forces are among the main aspects of a peace agreement that can be signed. That's their primary concern, of course, is that the Russians just pack up and go home and avoid more casualties at this point. 12 hours ago here, President Macron on the army. We need to step up our investments to be able to face a high-intensity war that can return to our continent. Again, this is a very alarming statement here being made by the French president, saying that we need to step up our military spending because they see that a war is coming. They see that it's very possible that war in Europe could be breaking out. Slovakia's defense minister says Washington has provided military support to the coalition forces on our soil. 12 hours ago here, Slovakia's defense minister Jaroslav Nad says through a translator that the meeting with Secretary of Defense focused on how we are going to seek ways to helping our friends in Ukraine. They need to help, and we will provide such. Again, more countries are looking to uh, get more lethal aid, more humanitarian support to Ukraine to not only bolster the defenses of the country, but help in that humanitarian crisis, which is beginning to unfold there. 12 hours ago, Ukraine was successful in preventing Russia from establishing air supremacy, adds the Secretary of Defense, and the alliance will reinforce the things that have worked for Ukrainian forces. Again, those Ukrainian air defense systems have been quite resilient and quite able at keeping control of the airspace there. Here, 12 hours ago, were some clashes at the Evacuations industrial zone there in Ukraine. You can see some footage here of that conflict. Again, it is a 6-minute long video there. Let me see if I can unmute here. Again, you can see those Russian forces engaged with some Ukrainian forces there. 11 hours ago, a two-year-old child was killed and 4 other people wounded as a result of Russian army shelling at Novi Prajitsy. Sorry, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that again. In the Vosharad district. Again, it's very unfortunate to see children getting caught in the crossfire here and more civilians being caught in the crossfire here. One thing I want to note, I believe, so yesterday we covered a bread line that was targeted by Russian forces in Ukraine. I believe that was near Kiev, if I'm not mistaken, and a journalist died. It turns out that a journalist actually was one of the people killed in that strike. It was a U.S. citizen. That was the one that went that was aired tonight, that made headlines this evening. Was that U.S. civilian? When we covered that bread line yesterday, we didn't have that news yet. We didn't have that information that there was actually a U.S. civilian in that bread line that was killed. So 11 hours ago here, Russian troops kidnapped the head of the Velkaki Burluk community that is here, kind of in the northern region of Ukraine, not too far from Kharkiv, to the east of Kharkiv. A little ways there is that village there of Velki Berluk. I'm not pronouncing that correctly. 11 hours ago, Russian shelling targeted the Akademistiko in western Kiev. That is right over here. You can see that report on the map here, up by Irpin and Bucha there. Here's Irpin here. Here's where those strikes took place there, as those Russian forces continue to try to advance on the city. The Ukrainians over the past 24 hours have had a few pretty successful counteroffensives, which across the country, which have had varying amounts of success in some areas. You can see like they've been trying to cut off areas, of kind of these flow of the Russian troops and forces westbound. We've noticed a lot of that. They're trying to cut off their forces using the same tactics that the Russians are using on them, doing things like pincer movements and ambushes and things to kind of cut off the flow of forces and supplies to certain areas. 11 hours ago, Abdullah bin Zayed confirms after talks with his Russian counterpart in Moscow that the UAE welcomes all mediation efforts to solve the crisis in Ukraine. 11 hours ago, a Russian military convoy was destroyed near Izium. That's here on the map. Again, we've seen lots of footage of the Ukrainians quite successfully destroying. One second here, let me get zoomed back in. Quite successfully destroying multiple Russian convoys in many different parts of Ukraine. They've definitely had the right training, and they definitely have the right equipment for carrying out these type of attacks on these Russian convoys. 11 hours ago here, additional Russian troops have entered Berdyansk today. There's footage of that I could show you guys here. Here's that footage there of these vehicles. "11 hours ago, the G7 warns in a statement that war criminals in Ukraine will be held responsible. Of course, they're speaking to those Russian commanders there, who would be the ones responsible for a lot of these war crimes which are taking place in Ukraine. 10 hours ago, British Defense Minister Ben Wallace said an imposter claiming to be the Ukrainian Prime Minister contacted him on Thursday and asked several misleading questions. 10 hours ago, Russia recruiting foreign fighters for Ukraine. We have not seen a flow of fighters from the Middle East per CENTCOM. General McKenzie was the one that made that statement there. We just haven't seen much of that yet out of Syria, and we look at that pretty closely. That should change, he notes. 10 hours ago, the president of the International Committee of the Red Cross calls for urgent measures to alleviate the suffering of civilians in Ukraine. Again, speaking to that humanitarian crisis, which is unfortunately unfolding there at this time. 2 hours ago, a residential complex caught on fire in Irpin. Again, here's a photo of that. We've seen many cases of residential complexes being fired upon in not only Kiev, but many other areas of Ukraine as well. 2 hours ago here, 2 killed and a warehouse caught fire as a result of Russian army shelling in the Svetodshinsky district of Kiev. There's a video of that here, which I will bring up for you guys. Again, this is just west of the city center there in Kiev. There's some photos here of that warehouse fire from most likely a shelling that occurred there. You can see those brave Ukrainian firefighters there coming to the job to get that fire put out there in Kiev. 10 hours ago, 6 killed as a result of shelling with cluster ammunition targeting a railway station in Kazacha, Lopan, north of the Kharkiv region. I can pull that up on the map here for you. Again, the Russian army has been starting to target things like railway infrastructure, rail lines, roadways in some areas even, to inhibit, in some cases, the flow of Ukrainian forces and supplies. But we're also seeing the same thing by the Ukrainian forces, used quite successfully in slowing down the advancing Russian forces. 10 hours ago, several Ukrainian media were hit in an apparent cyber attack. Those reports came out of central Kiev there from the city center. Again, we've heard a number of reports on these cyber attacks targeting both TV stations and internet service providers, along with cellular communications infrastructure in and around the region. 10 hours ago, one firefighter died while extinguishing a Barabashovo market in Kharkiv. Was heavily targeted in shelling by the Russian army there. I can pull that up on the map here, a little bit north of Kharkiv there. Again, Kharkiv has been hit very heavily. However, if you notice, it does look in some places like the Ukrainian defense has mounted a quite successful counteroffensive in some of these areas and pushed the Russians out of a lot of these areas here in northeastern Ukraine. 9 hours ago, Biden just referred to Putin as both a murderous dictator and a pure thug in a continuation of those harsh words from yesterday, where he referred to Putin as a war criminal. Again, I believe we have a video on that here I can pull up for you guys. 1 second here. Let me make sure this, make sure the audio. Some interesting words there from U.S. President Joe Biden. Again, calling Russian President Putin a murderous dictator and, quote, a pure thug. Very interesting words there. 9 hours ago, Russia has launched more than 1,000 missiles into Ukraine in 3 weeks of war, says senior U.S. defense officials. Again, they're speaking to short, medium, and long-range missiles that were fired from Russian territory into the Ukrainian region. Those are ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, etc. That's quite a lot of ordnance. 6 hours ago, Russia is beginning to get concerned about how long it can keep troops in Ukraine after 3 weeks of war. Senior U.S. defense official made that statement there. Russia is considering adding more supplies since it did not promptly plan logistics in a 4-month run-up to the conflict, says the official. I believe a little bit of that is propaganda, saying that they didn't properly plan logistics. I definitely think there was some lack of logistical planning on behalf of Russia. That's for sure. But I don't think we should underestimate the Russian force capabilities, even at this time. You know, they sent in, that conscript, that force primarily made up of kids, conscripts, reservists. And a lot of them didn't have proper training. A lot of them, were freshly drafted in, so to speak, called to service. So that initial force that's gone in has basically been decimated at this point. And I think they're going to get more desperate. Okay, they're going to get more desperate as the days drag on here, as this war drags on, and they're going to resort to some more violent and effective means of bombarding the Ukrainians into submission. And so that's my fear. I think is that we're going to see an escalation in just the type of munitions being used, how the volume of munitions that are being used, what targets are being striked, etc. So I think it should be it's very important that we don't underestimate them at this point, and we got to stay on our toes and keep them on their toes even more. Um, uh, Russia again is considering adding more supplies since it did not properly plan logistics. So we've already seen evidence of this, of them kind of shuffling around troops from the eastern regions of Russia and bringing in more forces into the Ukrainian region. There's still we've had satellite images from Maxar that do show that along the borders there is still significant emplacements of troops in some areas that haven't been sent in over the border and that could be used here. Again, I reiterate what I've said the past few nights on the show is that I believe Putin wants to win this war with the least amount of Russian body bags as possible. While taking advantage of things like these Chechen forces, which we're seeing sent in, and now another 1,000 of them were announced to be moving in now. We just read that here a short while ago. So those Chechen forces, possibility of Belarus getting involved. That always is a possibility. The other night we saw those explosions that rocked many different cities in Belarus. Those were later shown to be air quotes training exercises, which is a very suspect report that came out there. I believe it was in the middle of the night, and it was unplanned report, so I'm not exactly sure what exactly is going on there in Belarus, and we don't really have that much in the way of concrete information there as to what the Belarusian intentions are there, but it's possible that they might get involved. Again, the breakaway state in Moldova, Transnistria, that could also be involved here. Again, possibility that forces from the Middle East are getting involved. We still haven't seen very many signs of that happening yet, but it could be in the cards, and it is possible. Uh, Again, 8 hours ago, Anthony Blinken made a statement here saying that the Russian war affects fuel prices and the economy globally. Again, that's kind of a given. Given kind of the situation and the geopolitical circumstances when it comes to that fuel of flow coming from Russia, we're probably going to see continued effects on our fuel prices. Again, Blinken made another statement saying U.S. has a strong sense of what Russia could do next, hinting that it could be a false flag attack involving chemical weapons, quote, manufacturing events to justify the greater use of military force, employing mercenaries and systematically kidnapping local officials and replacing them with puppets. Again, we've already seen that last one already happening in many different areas. 8 hours ago, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken says military aid to Ukraine includes anti-tank and air defense systems. 8 hours ago, Russian President Vladimir Putin may be growing more desperate, according to that Secretary of State Anthony Blinken there. 8 hours ago, a Pentagon official says Russian forces are moving artillery towards Kiev in preparation for bombing it. Again, that was 8 hours ago, and that is consistent with some of the satellite imagery which we have been taking a look at here. Shows that they are emplacing troops still at this hour. Again, as they get more desperate, they're going to look to again just start bombarding the cities like they did in Kharkiv. Kharkiv held out, really well. Those Ukrainian defense forces there, I mean, they're still holding out to this day. And so, unfortunately, the Russians, as they get more desperate, that's how they switch up their tactics. They switch to bombarding these cities into submission. 8 hours ago, Blinken says, I can confirm an American citizen was killed in Ukraine. I do not have any more details. Again, referring to that citizen which was killed in that bread line, which we covered yesterday here on the show. 8 hours ago, Secretary of State Anthony Blinken says, "I have not seen any meaningful efforts by Russia to bring this war that it is perpetrating to conclusion through diplomacy." Again, referring to just the tit for tat rhetoric that's been being thrown back and forth, this kind of propaganda war that they've been orchestrating through these diplomatic meetings and addresses. Um, 8 hours ago, a Pentagon official says the equipment that arrived in Ukraine will allow it to confront Russian forces, as we've seen clear evidence of this entire time. Everything from those Stinger missiles to the Javelin missiles have been an excellent asset, a very extremely useful asset to um, to those Ukrainian defensive forces. 8 hours ago, a Pentagon official states the weapons provided to Ukraine are capable of targeting Russian forces from a distance. Of course, we've also seen that is clear in the evidence. We've seen quite a few circumstances where Russian forces, including some. We watched a video actually earlier of an artillery battery that was targeted by those Bayraktar drones quite successfully from quite a distance. Another statement from Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, this is around 8 hours ago, says he personally agrees that Russia has committed war crimes in Ukraine. Internationally targeting civilians is a war crime. After all the destruction of the past 3 weeks, I find it difficult to conclude that the Russians are doing otherwise, he says. 8 hours ago, 28 buses were evacuated from the settlements of the Kiev region to safe places. So, 28 buses full of people here in the city center of Kiev have now been evacuated to undisclosed safe locations. So, bunkers, shelters, or most likely a lot of them are now moving south and westbound to get out of the country. That is very possible as well. 7 hours ago, an update from the United Nations here. They say the scale of civilian casualties and the destruction of infrastructure in Ukraine requires thorough investigation and accountability. Again, I would add to that I mean, a lot of the numbers we have so far for civilian casualties, for troop casualties, for collateral damage, etc. I mean, a lot of that is either a mix of overestimates or underestimates. In the case of civilian casualties, I believe that's probably a severe underestimate. There's probably a lot of unaccounted for civilian casualties in this mess. I would say, for troop casualties, on one hand, they could be overestimated. On another hand, they could be underestimated. So, from the Russian point of view, you're most likely seeing an underestimated report of their own casualties, where from the Ukrainian side, you're probably seeing overestimations in their numbers, to boost morale, of course. That's a given in any situation, in any propaganda war. Now, when it comes to things like collateral damage, just think of the amount of houses that have been damaged, of infrastructure assets that have been damaged here that have not been accounted for. That is probably going to skyrocket as the months go on here. 7 hours ago, a White House cites a high concern that China may provide Russia with weapons. Again, I was talking about this a little bit earlier. It does look like China is going to be providing Russia with lethal aid, to the effect of weapons, vehicles. It's possible that we have seen some evidence, of some other private military entities getting involved here. Some even from the Pacific Asian region getting involved here that might come into play. Again, we're going to have to keep an eye on that situation. It does look like, though, at the least we will see some lethal aids provided to Russia, maybe some financial aid provided to Russia. I don't think that's outside the realm of possibility whatsoever. Again, here 7 hours ago, the White House citing high concern that China may provide Russia directly with that lethal aid. 7 hours ago, Britain's envoy to the Security Council says Russia is the one who must put an end to this war. Again, 7 hours ago, Britain's envoy to the Security Council also states Russian forces besiege cities and towns, indiscriminately bomb residential neighborhoods, and use cluster ammunition, which we have proven here on the show. We do have evidence of those cluster munitions being used in more than one instance. 7 hours ago, the U.S. citizen killed in Ukraine today was James Whitney Jeremy Hill from Minnesota. CNN confirms via an advisor to Ukraine's interior minister. New York Times says he traveled to Cherniv in December for his partner, a Ukrainian, to be treated for multiple sclerosis. Again, that has been confirmed. He says they got stuck in a hospital. This has been confirmed to be the same person. We watched that bread line get unfortunately targeted by those Russian forces. Yesterday, we watched a video from the aftermath of that event, and unfortunately, he was one of the victims of that strike there in Cherniv. 7 hours ago, ongoing artillery battle between Russian and Ukrainian forces between Kherson and Mykolaiv, where Ukrainian forces have been launching counterattacks in recent days to some success, I might add. In fact, earlier we were watching some footage. I believe I even had some up on the stream actually from those fights that have been taking place down near Mykolaiv Oblast there. The Ukrainian forces have been quite successful in some of these areas at repelling those Russian forces and not letting them continue heading westward from Mykolaiv there. 7 hours ago, President Zelensky continued dialogue with President Emmanuel Macron, the French president. Discussed support to Ukrainian people against Russian aggression, among other in defense. 7 hours ago, shelling in Adivika with howitzers. That's in the eastern region here, near the Donbass, near the Donetsk Oblast there. 7 hours ago, actually, never mind, hold on, we're up here. 6 hours ago, Putin's war of aggression is aimed at the Ukrainians' will for freedom, and thus also against our values and European freedom. We as NATO have to take this threat seriously and adjust our security measures accordingly. Again, the NATO and the U.S. and its allies are looking to increase readiness. I definitely feel like they think that there's possibility for severe escalations occurring here, and I believe that's why we're seeing some of the changes to readiness level. The sharp increase to that readiness level that we've seen over the past weeks, is not just because the war is taking place, which is a given, but I think we've seen preparations for what it could become, what it could unfortunately escalate into if this does continue on and continue to spin out of control. 6 hours ago, the Spanish Prime Minister said in Bucharest that the economic effects of the war in Ukraine are severe, as a lot more countries in the European region start to feel severe blowback from this war that is happening in Ukraine. Everything from fuel prices to food prices, etc. 6 hours ago, the European Union launches a freeze and seize task force to enforce sanctions against listed oligarchs from Russia and Belarus. It will work with G7 and Australia's new Russian elites, proxies, and oligarchs task force. 6 hours ago, Russian troops in Rubzin, now, again, that is north of Luhansk, kind of northwest there of Luhansk. 6 hours ago, U.S. intel sharing with Ukraine is making a difference, per the Department of Defense, under the Secretary for Intel, Ronald Moultrie, tells the HASC Subcommittee on Intelligence and Special Operations that it's, in quote, it's accurate, it's timely, and it's actionable, he says, and that they are very pleased with the intel that we are providing. I believe that the Ukrainians are receiving very quality intel, not just from the U.S., and not just from the Europeans, and as well as NATO. They're also getting very good open source intelligence from from all sorts of agencies, private and public entities across the world. I would argue that even, I mean, there's even probably been some reports made on behalf of our community to the Ukrainian defense that probably were of some aid. Open source intelligence nowadays is extremely useful, especially in such a large event like this invasion that is happening across Ukraine. As we've seen here firsthand, there are eyes and ears in every corner of Ukraine, and most of those are openly accessible, including some of their radio systems are openly accessible. We've been able to monitor not only levels of radio traffic, but specifics of radio traffic coming from the Russian side. And so there's been a lot of intel that they've probably been able to gather just, with their own intelligence operations right there on the ground, not just the stuff that, third parties are feeding them as well. 6 hours ago, shelling again targeting Kharkiv. Explosions reported again right here in smack dab in the city there of Kharkiv, where those explosions were heard. I don't believe we have updates exactly to what building was striked there, or if that was like maybe a military target that was striked in Kharkiv. But we will get more information on that at a later point here. 5 hours ago, head of Luhansk Regional Administration confirms that Russian troops have advanced in the town of Rubizin. 5 hours ago, an ambassador tells AFP that Moscow has canceled the vote on its humanitarian resolution after it failed to secure a co-sponsorship to the draft text from China and India. Okay, so again, that is all of the updates that I have currently off of Live UA Map. As it lags behind tonight, we are a little bit behind there. Actually, we do have a few more updates here that I can go through that just came in here. So we have that shelling again. That was now 9 hours ago. Okay, so 9 hours ago, there were red alert sirens in Kiev and Zhytomyr. In fact, I was here on the stream earlier, I believe. I was doing some work in the background when those alert sirens sounded. We then had sirens in Lviv later in the evening. We just a short while ago heard the all clear sirens sounded in some of those regions. 9 hours ago, head of Luhansk Regional Administration again confirms that Russian troops were in Rubizin there. That is north of Luhansk. That's where we left off there a minute ago. 8 hours ago, Vessel Kyiv, Brovary, Bila, etc. All had red alert aerial threat sirens sounding. Take cover now. That was 8 hours ago. Ambassador tells AFP that Moscow canceled the vote on its humanitarian resolution after it failed to secure co-sponsorship of the draft text from China and India. 3 hours ago, Russian strategic bomber high-frequency voice net active. Again, we heard those reports. I brought those to you. We heard that activity, that escalated activity on the Russian radio nets, and then a short while after, there was those strikes in Lviv that targeted. It looks now at this point like it was an airport that was unfortunately targeted there in Lviv. Let me see if I could scroll out and get a report on the map here for you guys. I don't think we have any reports from there yet, but we will probably within the coming hours here. And then, so 3 hours ago, there was an air raid, red alert sirens in Kharkiv. And then just 28 minutes ago, we also had red alert sirens sounding in Dnipro as well. So we could expect to probably see some reports of explosions or an attack in that region around Dnipro. Okay, so that concludes my quick round of updates here for the morning of the 18th / night of the 17th. Kind of a combo update there for you guys. Right after this is done, we'll most likely be hopping into an interview with Yoru, aka Mehmet, here. We'll probably do that first, and then we'll be having our open mic panel discussion. And then after the open panel discussion, I'll be hopefully bringing you guys another round of updates. So right now, stand by. We're currently looking at cams from around Ukraine, mostly Kiev here. I'll check really quick and see if we have the cams coming from the square back online with audio now. And if so, I will put those on the screen for you guys. Again, if you missed this update live, we'll be uploading this update right after it's done to our YouTube channel. That's youtube.com/NEMICO Network. So for future reference, if you guys miss out on an update, we'll be uploading them now to the YouTube channel every time we do those updates. If you are interested in joining the Discord, there's a link to that in the description below. You're welcome to come and join the conversation and join the flow of intel and reports that is occurring over there on the Discord server. We'd be glad to have you guys over there. Everybody's welcome to come and join. Again, the link to that is discord.gg/NEMICO. You can find that link in the description below. You can find links to everything else as well in the description below this video and below the stream. If you haven't already, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. It's the best way to support not only the live stream, but to support the channel. Again, guys, until next time, stand by, and we'll be bringing you here shortly an interview from Mehmet on the ground, as well as our open mic panel discussion. So stand by for that.